I can't hear
Started
Pastor
the
Sue.
recording.
Can you hear me now?
Yeah.
Okay, there we go. A little technical difficulty. To please mute their mic. That's not on feedback. So, welcome to this meeting. My name is Pastor Sue Kesterman, and I'm the Chief Executive. I have crazy feedback. Do you hear an echo? As I do.
I do.
Okay. All right. So, welcome to this meeting. I'm Pastor Sue Kesterman, Chief Executive Officer at Churches United for the Homeless, and I'm happy to welcome you to this community information meeting about the proposed silver lining apartment. I'm pleased to be joined by Joe Rizzo from Beyond Shelter Incorporated. They are our development partner, as well as Mayor Judd from the city of Moorhead. Mayor Judd will be acting as our interlocutor tonight. He'll be posing questions as we move through, because likely the questions he has are questions others will have as well.
Pastor Sue,
Yes.
if I can interject, Councilmember Deb White is also present too, representing the city as well.
Yes. Welcome, Deb. I see your screen.
Thank you. It's nice to be here.
And please feel free to interject a question, Councilwoman White, as well. We will have a time for questions at the end. And if you want to pose a question, you can put it into the chat feature. So this evening, we're going to talk about the Silver Linings project, the location, the floor plans and unit design, the exterior design options, the anticipated sources of funds, and have Q&A on the Silver Linings project. I'm going to turn this over now to Joe Rizzo.
Thank you, Pastor Sue. My name is Joe Rizzo. I'm with Beyond Shelter Incorporated. We're a nonprofit developer in the region, and we're really excited to be a part of this project, this new development to serve vulnerable seniors who have experienced or are in danger of becoming homeless. We did our pre-development on this project first with the market study with an institution called Novogradic, and we had and they excuse me, they looked at the project and other projects in the area, and they noticed that the number of seniors 62 and older are increasing at 3% a year. In the area, there's over 2,400 seniors that make less than $20,000 annually. That's pretty hard to make rent. 746 of those seniors actually make less than $10,000. So there's a huge need for this type of project when there's only 3 other affordable housing projects for those 55 older in the market. It's 153 units, and they're currently at 0 vacancy. Pastor Sue, would you like to talk about the FM Coalition?
Certainly. So, Chris, could we go back? There you go. So, according to the FM Coalition for the Homeless and the United Way, according to their State of Homelessness report, there are 1,075 persons who are experiencing homelessness on any given night in the Fargo-Moorhead area. In 2019, Churches United at its 2 shelters provided shelter to 662 adults. Of those, 126 were 55 and older, and 132 were ages 45 to 54. So we see a definite need for this kind of project in the community. So I think I need the next slide. There we go. Thank you. We're all just adjusting to this virtual thing, I think, as we go along.
Absolutely.
So Silver Linings will be a 3-story building consisting of 36 one-bedroom units, as well as community spaces. All residents will be 55 and older. All apartments will include a kitchen, a living room, bathroom, and appliances. All units will also be fully furnished. There will be secure entry with 24/7 front desk support. Other amenities will include on-site case management, empowerment courses, nursing support, and a food pantry.
Next slide. Silver Linings Apartments will be close to another project of Churches United called Bright Sky, where they're also serving those who are vulnerable to homelessness, both singles and families. So this project will be located right down the street, just north of Cashwise, and close to several bus stations with transport around the city for the Fargo Moorhead area. And there is aerial view of Silver Linings, as you can see that next to the nice grove of trees next to 34th Street. And there's the bus stop, which is in walking distance of both projects. Silver Linings will be set back on the northwest part of the lot. We did this to gain more green space, more buffer between other residences and the major street. And it also provides those mature trees to stay in place as well, which we thought was very important. And we know in past community meetings that was something that was brought up, and we want to keep following that promise. There is the layout overlay of the aerial view. As you can see, it's set off to the west of the trees, and it's also set back from the residential lots that are directly to the north. Silver Linings is a 3-story building. On the main floor, there'll be an abundance of community spaces, which is critical for the residents to change their lives around. There'll be a food pantry, a library, there'll be a crafts room, there'll be a community room, learning room. We'll have laundry on site, and there'll be several lounges throughout the building. We also wanted to include services on site, so we have offices on the site to provide for staff, service providers. There'll actually be a nursing room as well, where the nurse will be able to tend to the residents that live there. Something unique to this project, we put together a smaller 8-unit pod with its own, it's got its own bedroom, living room, bathroom, and kitchen. But outside of the unit is also a small community space that is shared with 8 units altogether, and their own laundry as well. Pastor Sue can talk about this more, but there is a great need for those that are transitioning into permanent housing where they haven't before, that need the extra structure near the services. And we feel that this is a unique thing we could do in this building to try to break that cycle. On the second and third floors will be all units. The second floor will have an identical 8-unit pod, and then it'll also consist of 8 one-bedroom, 1-bathroom, 2 of them fully accessible. And then on the third floor, there'll be 12 units, 1-bedroom, 1-bath, with 6 of those being fully accessible. And of course, we'll have laundry available on each floor.
All right. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Excellent.
I think we lost you, Pastor Sue.
There. I
Okay.
think I discovered the source of my feedback. Is this better?
It
Okay.
is.
All right. I'm really excited to walk you through this first floor of the Silver Linings building, as well as to just walk you briefly through the other 2 floors. So as we've approached this project and have worked together in the design phase with Beyond Shelter, as well as with Schultz and Associates, who are our architects, we've tried to incorporate learnings into the floor plan that we have gained both from our experience in providing shelter and from our experience with the Bright Sky Apartments, which have now been open a little over 2 years. So if you look at your screen and look towards the left side, you will see an area that is shaded in green. This is that 8 one-bedroom unit pod system that Joe was talking about. This was very, very important to us. One of the things that we know to be true is that for some of our seniors who have experienced homelessness chronically, life at the shelter goes pretty well for them. And that's usually because they benefit from the sense of community that's built in, the staff support that's on site, and some structure and the opportunity to share meals. But shelter can't be the end game. The purpose of shelter is always to help people move on to the next part of their life and to move on to stable housing. And so sometimes what we see with these folks is that our case managers work to get them into housing, and they get into a housing situation that's out in the community where there's not robust supports on site. And sometimes that sense of isolation is very difficult for them, and they do sometimes end up cycling back to shelter. And so what we wanted to do in the form of the building and the design of the building was to find ways to serve the desired function of creating a sense of built-in community so that our folks could stay stably housed longer and continue to grow stronger and more stable in their housing situation and be able to age in place as they move beyond 55 and into the rest of their lives. And so that's what you see reflected in this 8 one-bedroom unit pod. So each of these smaller one-bedroom units has its own kitchen, its own bedroom, its own bathroom, a little living area, but they surround a shared lounge area that has a communal kitchen as well and a laundry. And so the idea is that each resident in these pods has an opportunity to have that sense of autonomy and their own space, but to also have the opportunity to access built-in community as they need it. And hopefully that will result in housing stability for the long term. As you look across to the middle of the screen, the areas that are shaded in kind of a light blue are the staff areas of the building. And in these areas, we've tried to learn lessons from Bright Sky. So one of the things that we know at Bright Sky is that while 24/7 front desk support is really critical, the way that that office is situated sometimes makes it very difficult for the person behind the front desk to see and have good visualization of all the areas of the first floor, and also to be accessible to tenants when they need something. And so we've put our reception area kind of right smack in the middle of the first floor with good visualization of the main entrance and the common hallway and the community areas. Also, the walls on that front desk area above the countertop height will largely be glass, so there's good visualization for the person behind the front desk as well as for tenants when they're coming off the elevator to see who's behind the front desk and be able to have conversation with that individual. Next to that, as you move to the left, is another area where we have incorporated learnings, and that's in this food pantry prep area. So nutrition support is very, very important for people who are struggling with poverty or homelessness or growing into greater housing stability but are very low income. And so just as at Bright Sky, we'll have a weekly food delivery and a food pantry. But what we didn't think about, because we hadn't done it before when we were doing Bright Sky, was the logistics of what happens when the truck comes, right? And so our food pantry area at Bright Sky is quite small, and there's really no place in the food pantry to sort the food when it comes in. And so what we've incorporated here is a larger food pantry prep area that has a table for sorting. There are shelves located along the lower wall of that space. There are 2 refrigerators and a freezer along the left wall. And then the part of the wall that has little boxes, that we're really excited about, because what it is they are drawers that a crate will fit in, and the drawers will slide in towards the food pantry prep area, so that after the delivery has been sorted, the crate can go into the drawer for each tenant. And then when the tenant comes to get their food delivery, they're able to pull that drawer out into the hallway and receive their crate. And each of those drawers will be keyed so that it is the same as the door to their apartment. Next to that is an area that's indicated as crate return. This is another place where we've tried to, incorporate some learnings. So when tenants have had an opportunity to put their groceries away, they'll be able to bring the crate back down, put it in the crate return, where it can be sanitized and staged for the next delivery. Next to that is a conference room. And next to that is the nurse's office. We have a nurse's office at Bright Sky, and we have a nurse there about 20 hours a week through a partnership with Sanford Health. We anticipate, because it's an older population, that we'll need to have a little bit larger health outreach office. And we've already had some preliminary conversations about the number of hours we would need to have a nurse on site. So the office is a little bit larger, and it also has an exam table, a nurse's desk, a storage cabinet, and a sink. And then next to it is a locked storage area for meds that may need to be stored. And in there is a refrigerator for those medications that may need to be refrigerated, or nutritional supplements. Next to that is a restroom. Below that is a service provider office. We will have 1 full-time case manager on site at Silver Linings, but we know that some of our tenants will work with case managers from the VA or from other agencies in town that provide support to them. And so it's important to have a service provider office where those service providers can meet with tenants who are clients of theirs in the building. As you move across, there are 3 offices there. Likely 2 will be occupied by staff and 1 by property management. And then next to that is a workroom that doubles as an employee break area. Then continuing on, the areas that are shaded in lavender are the community areas of the first floor. So there's a library with a computer lab and some table seating, you'll see. And then as you move to the right from there, there's a lounge. There's a craft and activity room. And then down towards the lower portion of your screen, there's a community room. The community room is shown divided. It can be divided into 2 spaces. It's shown in this drawing, set up with tables on one side and set up in a classroom format on the other. There will be 2 smart TVs in this room, so that a nutrition class, for instance, might be being taught, and slides that go along with that can be shown on that smart TV. Or there might be a classroom setting. We often host groups in the community that provide service, and so there's an opportunity for a presentation space there. There's also areas where some of that furniture can be taken up and stored, so that if we have a stretching class or a yoga class or some other activity where people need to be able to move and stretch out, the furniture doesn't need to be a barrier or be in the way. Let's move on to the second floor. So the second floor has another one of these 8-unit pods. So there are a total of 16 of the units in the building that are arranged around this 8-unit pod structure. Then on the second floor, There are two of the little bit larger, fully handicapped accessible one-bedroom units, and 6 units that are what are termed handicap visitable. There's also a lounge and a laundry. And then if we move on to the 3rd floor, you will see that there are 6 more of the fully handicapped accessible units and 6 more of the handicap visitable units, another lounge, and another laundry area, making for 36 units in all, 16 smaller one-bedroom units that would be appropriate for a single individual, and then 20 a little bit larger one-bedroom units that would be for either an individual or perhaps a couple to live in. Any questions before we move on? I'm so glad I got the feedback thing figured out. That was awful. All right. Is this you, Joe? I can't remember what slide we're on.
I can take it.
Great, thank you.
We'll go over the unit designs in a little bit closer look. The smaller units in the 8-unit pods they're 1 bedroom, 1 bath. They're 500 square feet. Then we have the 12 1 bedroom, 1 bath that are handicap visitable that are at 650. And of course, the fully accessible are a little bit larger, and they range from 780 to 840 square feet. And on the next slide, we can take a quick look at what they look like with some furniture in place. We saw the 8-unit pods on the floor plan with the center community space and laundry. There's a breakdown on the left for the 1 bedroom type B congregate 500 square foot. Kind of shows again how a person can move around with the circles that even someone that has a wheelchair can access these units fairly easily. The 1 bedrooms that are 650, you can see ample space for the bedroom, full kitchen, full bathroom, living room. And then in the accessible, there'll be, all units will have walk-in showers, but the accessible will have a roll-in shower as well. And a little bit extra space for movability and to accommodate any other items that we might need to.
All right, thank you.
Yes.
So before we go through the color renderings and the exterior design options, now that I don't have feedback, I'd just like to talk with you about why this is so important. People who work with me at Churches United know that while I find it very easy to get folks in our community to understand why it's so important to support families who are experiencing homelessness, I have a real soft spot for older individuals who are experiencing homelessness. And so I'll just tell you a quick story about 2 of my favorite long-term homeless people that I've known over the years. One is a gentleman, his first name is Dick, and he's about 72 now. He was chronically homeless for the better part of 20 years, bounced around the country, but he has family here in the area and was originally from this area. When he was at the shelter, when we were building the Bright Sky Apartments, I got to know him and really like him a lot. He's a tall, gentle guy, has a great sense of humor. He has a decades-long battle with alcohol that he often loses. And when he was at the shelter, he was the first one to step up and to help with kind of the nastier chores, like taking the garbage out or doing the pans in the kitchen or cleaning the bathrooms in the men's lounge. And so he was in the process of getting a housing voucher when we were building Bright Sky. And he was one of the first people to move in. My office is just outside the men room at the shelter. And so that's sort of the crossroads. Everybody goes to the med room sometime during the day. So I came in one morning and Dick said, "Hey, Pastor Sue, guess what?" And I said, "What?" He said, "I get to move into Bright Sky and I got to choose my own unit and it has 2 windows." Now think about that, right? This is a gentleman who's been homeless for the better part of 15 or 20 years. And now he gets to choose his apartment, and it has 2 windows. He was one of the first people to move into Bright Sky, and he's still there. So he's had more than 2 years of housing stability now under his belt. During the course of his homelessness, Dick lost contact with much of his family. As often happens with people who struggle with addiction and mental illness, I think his family just kind of got exhausted. And so he really didn't have a lot of family support. But I went up to visit him at Bright Sky after he'd been in there a few months, and he was cleaning in his unit, and he was getting a meal together, and his sister was coming to join him for dinner in his apartment. And that sounds like success to me. Now, Dick is in his 70s. He's not ever going to get a 40-hour-a-week job, right? That's not what success looks like for him. But he's in his own apartment with dignity. He has what he needs, and he's rebuilding the relationships in his life with his family. And that sounds like success. Now, the other story I'll tell you about doesn't have quite as happy an ending, and that's why one of the reasons why I'm so passionate about this project. The other gentleman I'll tell you about, his first name was Paul, and I had known Paul probably for 10 years. I got to know him first when I was serving as pastor at Elam Lutheran downtown. Paul was a longtime fixture in the homeless community. He often used to come and see me at Elam and visit with me and harass me and give me the business. He was kind of a crusty old guy. I liked him very much. Paul was one of those people who was very reluctant to access shelter. He had anxiety disorder and PTSD. And so the very crowded setting in the shelter was really hard for him. And so up until about the last 3 or 4 years, he very seldom accessed shelter. But by the time he was in his mid-50s, he had been chronically homeless by his own account for about 35 years. And when someone has been homeless for that long, chronologically, they might be in their 50s, but biologically, they're in their late 70s or early 80s. So Paul kind of made his way in. He'd come in and eat in the community center and see the nurse, and then we finally got him into a dorm. And we worked very, very hard. And a case manager got him into an assisted living type facility where he lasted a grand total of 48 hours before he broke a rule and ended up back at the shelter. One morning, he greeted me in the in the entryway with his backpack and his little bag of meds, and he just said, "Mama, I screwed up." So then that was by the time we were together with Dorothy Day. We were able to get him in at the Dorothy Day house. He did really well at Dorothy Day. He was there for about 3 months. He did really well. That sense of built-in community was really good for him, and he was thriving. But like I said before, the purpose of shelter is not long-term. The purpose of shelter is short-term and to get people into an apartment. And so the case manager worked, got him into an apartment setting where he fell and broke his back and had to have surgery. And then he had an infection and he died. I presided at his funeral. I don't do that much anymore. And I think Paul would have done really well in one of these units in the pod. And everybody should have a chance to do that, to live with dignity in their own place with the supports that they need. So that's my stories. People always want to know about stories. So when you think about how important it is for families and children who are experiencing homelessness to have a home, and that is very, very important. Please think about my friends Dick and my friend Paul. And remember, they were kids once too, and they deserve a place to be. Now, I will turn this. Oh, do I get to do the color renderings, or is that you, Joe?
You were blessed and showing the good stuff.
Yay. All right, then I get to do this. So the next slides show the architect's elevations of the units from various angles in 2 different finish imaginings. So let's just go ahead and scroll through here. There's one that's kind of in grays and tans and blues. This is the front. Another view from the front. And from the front, you'll see there's a patio area that's envisioned as part of this. And a beautifully mowed, drainage ditch backyard. And the grove of trees, ready for people to walk and sit and enjoy. And then the second is more in browns and grays and slates. Again, different angles. All right. Okay. And then I think Joe gets to talk about anticipated sources of funds.
Yeah. Thanks, Pastor Sue. Those are great renderings and helps kind of put that visualization of what the project might look like. The anticipated sources of funds. So everybody wants to know how are we going to pay for this? Is it going to cost me money? The sources we're going to use to pay, there's an IRS housing tax credit program out there that every state has. We are applying for that through the Minnesota Housing Finance Agency. With those tax credits, we get to sell them on the secondary market to a syndicator or a bank, where they purchase those tax credits for a certain cent on the dollar. And that in turn helps us gain a little equity into the project and construct the project. We're also applying through the Minnesota Housing Finance Agency for some bonds, housing infrastructure bonds. This is a great tool for those that are for senior projects and homeless projects. It helps us with getting the finance to build the property, and it's a deferred loan. So long term, it helps us on the operating side. We've also applied for some funds through the Federal Home Loan Bank at Des Moines called the Affordable Housing Program, and estimated about $1 million. As well as Churches United is doing a fundraising campaign to help fill some of the gap for this type of project. We're not looking for any city or local dollars in this, so there's no direct hit on the taxpayer here. And we're excited. This is something that Beyond Shelter does on a regular basis using this tax credit program. It's a great form, a great program to build affordable housing. I wish we could do more of it. And I believe that we'll get awarded these funds and we'll be able to start on a great new project for Moorhead.
Thank you, Joe. In a minute here, I will introduce Brent Brandt, who is our Chief Development Officer, and we'll take some questions, Joe and Brent and I, and happy to do that. I did want to just talk a little bit about the income level of people who will be in this building. As we're constructing our application to Minnesota Housing, we are anticipating that between 50.1 and 75% of the tenants will make 30% or less of average median income. The remainder will make 50% or less of AMI. The units will be available to folks who have a history of chronic homelessness, folks who are currently homeless, and people who are cost burdened in their housing and are at imminent risk of homelessness. So that's just very important for you all to know that that's our target, are people who really need a deeply affordable housing. We are seeking monetary support from the community and from folks who are interested in this project. And so we're going to proceed with our application, and we're going to make it the strongest one we can. But if we can come in our application saying that we can bring in 10% of the total anticipated cost as our commitment, Churches United, to the project, it's a much stronger application. So that's about $762,000, which is a figure that just makes me more than a little nervous. But we are bringing in about $310,000, $320,000 in the value of the land, which we already own, the equity in that. And then for the rest, we're going to be seeking contributions from congregations, from individual donors, from businesses, from people who are passionate about this project and think it's really important for our neighbors and for the city. When we did Bright Sky, we came in with an individual contribution that we brought forward. We brought forward $365,000. The bulk of that came from one very generous individual investor. Now, I would never, ever, ever turn down a single large gift, ever. I just want that for the record. I would never turn down a large gift from a single source. However, what I'd really like to see is for us to be able to say, we're bringing forward $450,000 in cash to this, and it's coming from 12 congregations and 50 members in our community, or whatever that breakdown is, because I think it just demonstrates what I know to be true, and that's that these are our neighbors, and Moorhead is a generous community, and that when all of our neighbors have a place to live, the community benefits, and I believe that it just speaks to the support of the community. So thus endeth the sermon. I am happy to respond to questions.
Looks like we have a question from Sarah about timeline.
Oh yeah.
I can talk about that.
Please, because I can't see that, and I'm afraid to click anything and end up, getting my echo back.
Sure.
Pastor Sue, I just want to recognize real quick. We do have fellow members of council. I know Councilmember White is on, but also Councilmember Watson Curry, who had asked the question. Also,
yes.
Council members Lindos, Hendrickson, and I want to make sure I'm not missing anyone. Okay, and then we also have Madam City Manager Volkers and Assistant City Manager Molly. And we do have city staff here on as well. So just so you are aware, you're on board. I do, as we stated earlier, have to leave for another meeting at about 7:50. So just so you know, there'll be, I'm sure, questions coming in as well. So
perfect.
Thank you for that. And this is being recorded. And I was going to mention your timeline early on, Mayor Judd, but I got rattled because there was such an echo and forgot it altogether. But welcome all of you from Moorhead City Council and from the City of Moorhead. We're very grateful to be a part of this community. So, Joe, you want to take away the question on timeline?
No, timeline, that's a great question. The applications for funding were just submitted for the Federal Home Loan Bank, and then for the bonding and the tax credits or applications are due in July. We won't know if we have an award until December. Once we do have an award, we will work with investors and do our due diligence with investors over the frozen months, which is great because we wouldn't be able to break ground until mid-May, June. And that gives us a 12-month cycle for construction so that we can be opening up our doors here in the summer of 2022. Pastor Sue, there's a question here about talk about the expected costs of rent for different units. You want to talk a little about the housing supports?
Yeah, I'm happy to do that. So we've been in conversation with Clay County Social Services regarding their HS housing support program. And so we anticipate that as many as 20 of the units will be a part of that HS program. The housing supports program is in this case, it's a project-based voucher, and the program makes up the difference between the individual's income and fair market rent. And then as part of the program, room and board, daily necessities, and case management services are provided. We are also in conversation with the VA for their VA VASH program, and we're anticipating that a number of the units will be project-based through VA VASH vouchers. Again, case management provided through the VA. All of the voucher programs operate off of a percentage of the individual's income is what they pay out of pocket for rent, and then the voucher makes up the remainder. And so everyone who lives at Silver Linings will be on some sort of a housing voucher program that's tied to their income so that their rent is graduated to their income. Again, all of the units will be fully furnished. We know that it's not very helpful to move someone from the shelter into an apartment if they don't have furniture or a bed or dishes or towels or all of the needful things that you have to live in a place day by day.
I don't see any additional questions. Does anybody have additional questions? Can you please clarify the 8-unit pods will be for 55 and older as well?
Yes.
Again, yes, that is the case. The whole building will be for 55 and older.
Yes. Steve asks, can I talk more about the coordination with Clay County? Yeah, so we're in conversation with Clay County. We're seeking a letter of support from the county commission. It would be unwise for me to get the cart in front of the horse and say we've got that all sewn up, but hopefully we have the good support for that. And when I spoke with them last, they felt that they were able to commit 20 project-based vouchers to the project and that it wouldn't cut into their bank of HS unit vouchers that they have. Any other questions? Oh, good, Sarah. Oh, that was a lovely comment. Thank you. I don't know who else was able to see that, but that was lovely. Well, we are happy to engage in conversation about this. If you have thoughts about the design as it is currently articulated, we'd love to have more conversation about that. What you saw tonight has been deeply informed by conversations between our team members who work at the shelters, who work at Bright Sky, conversations with Schultz and Associates. But there likely will be some fine tuning in between when our financing is approved and when we actually break ground. And so there's still a lot of time to talk more about that.
And Beyond Shelters is always available for any questions down the road. As time goes on, there'll be additional questions that you may get asked. And you might not know the answer. I'll be more than happy, or Pastor Sue, I'm sure, would be more than happy to kind of give you an update on where we are in the process and answer all your questions.
So I see a couple of people who have asked questions about outreach to neighbors. So we've been in conversation with Beyond Shelter about this for a long time. And as we were getting to this stage, we had 2 different community meetings that were on the books and the space was reserved. One in April and another in May. And then, you know, this little pandemic thing got in the way. And so we had to cancel those in-person meetings and figure out how to do this virtually. We're really grateful to the city of Moorhead and the opportunity to use the WebEx. We did, ahead of this, mail a flyer to the near neighbors of the project, letting them know about this meeting and how to access it. Also, as part of that flyer was the info at churches-united.org address if anyone had any questions and wanted to send an email question. I know from my day-to-day that people find it very easy to call Churches United and push extension 8 for executive director so that they can talk directly with me. I've had probably half a dozen phone calls in the last week or so. All of them have been uniformly pretty positive, and folks who've been looking for more information. We would have liked to have done deeper neighborhood outreach, but the times in which we live made a door knocking campaign probably not the best received idea. And this is being recorded so that hopefully folks who weren't able to join us are able to get the information that way. Oh, there's Dara. Yes, do encourage the Minnesota legislature to do housing infrastructure bonds and plenty of bond funding. And I know that our friends at Clay County HRA have some plans in the works as well for rehabbing rather than new construction, and all of us will benefit from the legislature doing a robust bonding bill. All right. Any other questions or comments?
Pastor Sue, I'll just interject real quick, just in case I have to cut off. But I really appreciate your, Joe and Brent's vision for this project. It definitely is a beautiful building. It's a beautiful setup to take care of our most vulnerable population. And again, I think what you're proposing fits in with what I believe is the mindset and the vision for what we have for residents of our city. I think it's our commitment to try to take care of everyone. We want this to be a place where people feel safe to live even as they age. So I think your vision really is where we would like to see our city go. So I do commend you on your vision again and your foresight to consider this project in our city. So it's an honor to work with you, and I think I would speak for the council. I know this is a first step and there's a way to go, but obviously if there's any questions or any thoughts that you have for us, please let us know how we can be any way supportive.
Thank you for that. Yep, I think Brent captured that. All right, if there are no more questions or comments, I think we'll sign off, but you know where to find us, and we're so grateful for the city and for the good government and the great community that we are all a part of.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Oh, Cody was on.
Thanks.
All right. Good night, all. Thank you.
All right, thank you.